The electromagnetic storm hit Kepler 442b like an angry god throwing lightning bolts across the purple sky. Marcus Chen wiped sweat from his forehead as he watched the weather sensors go crazy on his control panel. Red warnings flashed everywhere in his small supply depot, and the wind outside howled like a wounded animal. Marcus had been running this depot for 3 years now. It sat on the edge of human territory, where the main colony ended and the wild frontier began. Travelers stopped here for fuel, repairs, and supplies before heading deeper into unexplored space. Most days were quiet, but when storms like this hit, everything went wrong at once. The depot was not much to look at. It had a main building with living quarters, a workshop, storage areas, and the all-important fusion reactor that powered everything. Outside, landing pads stretched in neat rows, though right now they were empty except for his own small transport ship. No one was crazy enough to fly in weather like this. Marcus checked his instruments again. The storm would last at least 12 hours, maybe more. The electromagnetic interference was so strong that it knocked out most communication systems and made flying impossible. Anyone caught outside would have to wait it out. He was just settling down with a cup of coffee when he heard knocking at the main door. Marcus frowned. Who would be out in this weather? He grabbed his jacket and hurried to the entrance. When he opened the door, wind and rain blasted into the depot. Standing outside was a young woman, maybe 25 years old, with long black hair tied back and dark skin that spoke of Native American heritage. She wore simple clothes that looked handmade, and she carried what appeared to be traditional leather bags and pouches. "Please," she said, raising her voice over the storm. "I need shelter until this passes." Marcus stepped aside quickly. "Get in here before you get struck by lightning." The woman entered, shaking water from her hair. Marcus closed the door and turned to look at her properly. She was small but moved with confidence. Her clothes were well made but seemed old-fashioned for someone living in the space age. The leather bag she carried looked like something from Earth's past, decorated with beadwork and carved symbols. "I am Nina," she said simply. "Thank you for letting me in." "Marcus," he replied. "You picked a bad time to be traveling." "This storm is going to last all night," Nina nodded. "I know. My transport broke down about 5 kilometers from here. I walked the rest of the way." Marcus looked at her with surprise. "You walked 5 kilometers in this storm? That was dangerous. The lightning alone could have killed you." "I know how to read the patterns," Nina said. "I stayed safe." Marcus was not sure what she meant by reading patterns, but he did not ask. He assumed she was just another colonist who had gotten unlucky with the weather. Her traditional appearance made him think she was probably from one of the cultural preservation settlements, where people tried to maintain old Earth ways of life. "Well, you can stay in the workshop," Marcus said. "There are some blankets in the storage room and I have extra food. The storm should pass by morning." "Thank you," Nina said. "I will not be any trouble." Marcus showed her to the workshop, which was a large room filled with repair equipment, spare parts, and workbenches. It was not comfortable, but it was warm and dry. Nina found a corner and began unpacking her bags. Marcus watched as she pulled out what looked like camping gear, all made from natural materials. "You really stick to the old ways," Marcus commented. Nina looked up at him. "The old ways work," Marcus shrugged. He had met people like this before. Some colonists believed that traditional methods were better than modern technology. Marcus thought it was foolish. Why use primitive tools when you had advanced equipment? But he kept his opinion to himself. "I will be in the main control room if you need anything," Marcus said. "Help yourself to food from the kitchen." Nina thanked him again and Marcus left her alone. He returned to his control panel to monitor the storm. The electromagnetic readings were getting worse. This was turning into one of the strongest storms he had seen since arriving on Kepler 442b. For the next few hours, Marcus worked on routine maintenance tasks while keeping an eye on the weather. Nina stayed in the workshop and did not bother him. Occasionally he heard soft sounds from that direction, but nothing concerning. Around midnight, Marcus was checking the fusion reactor readings when he noticed something wrong. The power output was fluctuating in an unusual pattern. He frowned and ran a diagnostic scan. The results made his stomach drop. The reactor's magnetic containment field was becoming unstable. This was extremely dangerous. If the field collapsed completely, the fusion reaction would shut down automatically, but that would leave them without power in the middle of the storm. Worse, there was a small chance of a containment breach which could damage the reactor permanently. Marcus ran more tests, his hands moving quickly over the controls. The electromagnetic interference from the storm was affecting the reactor's control systems. The computer was having trouble maintaining the precise magnetic fields needed to contain the fusion reaction. "This is bad," Marcus muttered to himself. He tried several standard repair procedures, but nothing worked. The interference was too strong. His diagnostic equipment kept giving him error messages or contradictory readings. Without accurate information, he could not fix the problem. Marcus felt sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. If the reactor failed, they would lose life support within hours. The backup batteries could keep essential systems running for a while, but not long enough to wait out the storm. And with communications down, he could not call for help. He spent another hour trying different approaches, but the situation only got worse. The containment field was becoming more unstable, and his equipment was becoming less reliable as the electromagnetic interference increased. Finally, Marcus admitted to himself that he was in serious trouble. His modern diagnostic tools were useless in these conditions. He needed help, but what could Nina do? She seemed to prefer traditional methods over technology. Still, Marcus decided to ask. Maybe she had some ideas, or at least she deserved to know about the danger they were facing. Marcus walked to the workshop and found Nina sitting cross-legged on the floor. She had arranged various items from her bags in a circle around her. In the dim light, Marcus could see carved stones, beaded strings, and what looked like small metal objects. She appeared to be studying them carefully. "Nina," Marcus said, "we have a problem." She looked up at him calmly. "The reactor is failing." Marcus stared at her in surprise. "How did you know that?" "I can feel the energy patterns changing," Nina said. "The electromagnetic storm is disrupting the containment field." Marcus was amazed. He had not told her anything about the reactor, and the workshop was too far from the reactor room for her to hear any warning alarms. How could she possibly know what was happening? "Yes, that is exactly right," Marcus said. "My diagnostic equipment is not working properly because of the interference. I cannot figure out how to fix it." Nina stood up and gathered some of her items. "May I see the reactor?" Marcus hesitated. The reactor room was restricted area, and Nina was just a stranded traveler. But they were facing a life-threatening emergency, and his own efforts had failed. "I suppose it cannot hurt," Marcus said. "But be careful. If the containment field collapses, we could both be in serious danger." Nina nodded and followed Marcus to the reactor room. The fusion reactor was a massive cylindrical device that stood 3 meters tall and hummed with barely contained energy. Control panels surrounded it, displaying hundreds of readings and status indicators. Right now, many of those indicators were flashing red or yellow warnings. Marcus pointed to the main display. "See these readings? The magnetic field strength is fluctuating too much. The computer cannot compensate for the electromagnetic interference from the storm." Nina approached the reactor slowly. She did not look at the control panels. Instead, she seemed to be studying the reactor itself, as if she could see something that Marcus could not. "Your equipment is fighting against the storm," Nina said. "It tries to force the magnetic fields to stay exactly the same, but the storm keeps pushing them around." "That is how containment fields work," Marcus said. "They have to be precise or the fusion reaction becomes unstable." Nina shook her head. "There is another way." She opened one of her leather pouches and pulled out what Marcus had thought were decorative beads. But as Nina held them up to the light, Marcus saw that they were not simple beads at all. They seemed to glow with their own inner light, and their surfaces showed complex patterns that shifted and changed as he watched. "What are those?" Marcus asked. "Bioorganic sensors," Nina said. "My people developed them over many generations. They work with natural forces instead of fighting against them." Marcus felt his assumptions crumbling. These were not primitive decorations. They were some kind of advanced technology that he had never seen before. Nina approached the reactor and began placing the glowing beads at specific points around its base. As she did, she pulled out more items from her pouches. There were carved stones that seemed to pulse with energy, thin metal wires that moved, like living things, and small crystalline objects that hummed softly. "What are you doing?" Marcus asked. "Creating a harmony field," Nina said. "Instead of forcing the magnetic containment to stay rigid, we let it flow with the storm while maintaining overall stability." Marcus watched in fascination as Nina worked. She did not use any of his diagnostic equipment. Instead, she seemed to sense the reactor's condition through her strange devices. Her hands moved with practiced skill, connecting the bioorganic sensors with the metal wires and positioning the carved stones in a complex pattern. My people learned long ago that fighting against nature usually fails, Nina explained as she worked. It is better to understand natural forces and work with them. When we came to the stars, we brought this knowledge with us. But how does it work? Marcus asked. Those devices look like they are made from organic materials. They are, Nina said. But they are also quantum processors and electromagnetic field generators. We grow them using techniques that combine traditional knowledge with advanced science. As Nina completed her setup, Marcus began to see changes in the reactor readings. The wild fluctuations in the magnetic field were becoming smoother. Instead of sharp spikes and drops, the field strength now varied in gentle waves that seemed to match the rhythm of the storm outside. The containment field is stabilizing, Marcus said in amazement. But how is that possible? The storm interference is still just as strong. Nina smiled. The field is no longer fighting the interference. It flows with it, like a tree bending in the wind instead of breaking. Marcus stared at the control panels. All the red warning lights had changed to yellow and many were turning green. The reactor was not only stable, it was actually running more efficiently than before. This is incredible, Marcus said. I have never seen technology like this. Where did your people learn to build these devices? Nina began packing up her equipment. We never stopped learning from the natural world. When other humans developed technology that tried to control nature, we developed technology that worked with nature. Both approaches have their place. But why do you dress like you are from the past? Marcus asked. And why do you carry everything in traditional bags? Because the old ways taught us important lessons, Nina said. My ancestors learned to read the patterns of weather, the flow of energy, the balance of natural forces. When we adapted these lessons for space travel, we created technology that works even when conventional systems fail. Marcus was beginning to understand. Nina was not a primitive colonist clinging to outdated traditions. She was an advanced engineer, whose people had found a completely different approach to technology. Are there many settlements like yours? Marcus asked. More than you might think, Nina said. We often serve as waypoints for travelers, especially in areas where conventional technology struggles. Our biotech remains functional in conditions that would destroy standard human equipment. As if to prove her point, the storm outside intensified. Marcus checked his instruments and saw that the electromagnetic interference had reached levels that should have shut down most electronic systems. But the reactor continued running smoothly, guided by Nina's organic devices. How long will your system keep working? Marcus asked. As long as the storm lasts, Nina said. The bioorganic components actually draw energy from electromagnetic fields. The stronger the storm, the better they function. Marcus shook his head in wonder. I owe you an apology. When you first arrived, I thought you were just someone who preferred old-fashioned ways. I had no idea you were carrying advanced technology. Many people make that assumption, Nina said. They see traditional materials and think primitive. But my people learned that the most advanced solutions often look simple on the surface. They returned to the main control room where Marcus continued monitoring the depot's systems. Everything was running perfectly despite the raging storm outside. Nina's bioorganic devices had not only solved the immediate crisis, they had actually improved the reactor's performance. Can you teach me how this works? Marcus asked. It would take years to learn properly, Nina said. The technology is not just about the devices themselves. It requires understanding the patterns and flows of natural energy. My people spend their whole lives studying these things. But surely you could show me the basics. Nina considered this. I can show you how to recognize the patterns. That is the first step. She pulled out one of the carved stones and placed it on the control panel. As Marcus watched, symbols appeared on its surface, shifting and changing in complex patterns. This shows the electromagnetic field around the reactor, Nina explained. See how the patterns flow and change? Your instruments show you numbers and graphs. but they do not show you the underlying harmony. Marcus studied the stone. At first, the shifting patterns seemed random, but as he watched longer, he began to see rhythms and cycles. The patterns were not chaotic at all. They followed rules that his instruments could not detect. "It is like music," Marcus said suddenly. "The electromagnetic fields have a rhythm." "Exactly," Nina said. "And once you can hear the music, you can learn to work with it instead of against it." They spent the next several hours talking about different approaches to technology. Nina explained how her people had developed bioorganic systems that could adapt and evolve. Marcus shared his knowledge of conventional engineering and manufacturing techniques. "Both approaches have advantages," Nina said. "Your technology is powerful and can be mass-produced quickly. Our technology is more flexible and works in extreme conditions. Humanity is stronger when we combine different methods." As dawn approached, the storm began to weaken. The electromagnetic interference decreased, and Marcus's communication systems came back online. He immediately received several messages from other settlements, asking about his status and offering assistance. "I should report that we are safe," Marcus said, "but I want to mention your help." "What should I tell them about your technology?" "Tell them the truth," Nina said. "That traditional knowledge and modern science can work together to solve problems that neither could handle alone." Marcus sent his report, describing how Nina's bioorganic technology had saved the depot. He was careful to emphasize that this was not primitive technology, but an advanced alternative approach that deserved respect and study. Within an hour, Marcus received responses from several research institutions and engineering companies. They were all interested in learning more about bioorganic systems and wanted to establish contact with Nina's people. "It looks like you are going to be very popular," Marcus told Nina. She smiled. "My people have been waiting for the right time to share our knowledge more widely." Perhaps that time has come. As the storm cleared completely, Nina prepared to leave. Her transport had been repaired by a rescue team and she was ready to continue her journey. "Where are you headed?" Marcus asked. "To the outer colonies," Nina said. "There are settlements there that need help with their power systems. The conditions are too harsh for conventional technology, but our bioorganic devices will work well." Marcus walked with her to the landing pad where her transport waited. It was a small ship, but Marcus could see that it had been modified with organic-looking components that seemed to grow from the hull like living tissue. "Will I see you again?" Marcus asked. "Perhaps," Nina said. "My people travel these routes regularly, and now that we have made contact, there will be more cooperation between our communities." She climbed into her transport and started the engines. The ship lifted off smoothly and disappeared into the clear morning sky. Marcus returned to his depot and began cleaning up from the storm. As he worked, he thought about everything that had happened. His assumptions about traditional cultures had been completely wrong. Nina's people had not rejected modern technology. They had developed their own advanced technology based on different principles. Over the following weeks, Marcus received visits from researchers and engineers who wanted to learn about bioorganic systems. Nina's people began sharing their knowledge, and soon there were joint projects combining conventional and bioorganic approaches. Marcus learned that Apache settlements across the galaxy had been quietly developing amazing technologies for decades. They had created living ships that could repair themselves, bioorganic computers that could think and adapt, and energy systems that worked in harmony with natural forces. The collaboration between different human communities led to breakthrough discoveries. Conventional technology provided power and precision, while bioorganic systems provided flexibility and resilience. Together, they could solve problems that had seemed impossible before. Marcus often thought about that stormy night when Nina had arrived at his depot. He had assumed she was just a stranded traveler seeking shelter. Instead, she had been a master engineer carrying technology that would change the future of human space exploration. The experience taught Marcus an important lesson about making assumptions. Just because something looked traditional or simple did not mean it was primitive. Sometimes the most advanced solutions came from unexpected sources. Nina had been right when she said that humanity was stronger when different approaches worked together. The combination of various human cultures and technologies was creating possibilities that no single group could achieve alone.